Yo, the day after Russia officially banned Bitcoin mining for 6 years in 10 different regions, the country's finance minister came out and confirmed that Russia is using Bitcoin in international trade settlements. So what is really happening in Russia? Why are they banning Bitcoin mining in multiple regions while simultaneously confirming that they're using Bitcoin to bypass the Western sanctions imposed on them in 2022? Today, we're going to be diving into one of the most confusing nation-state Bitcoin rabbit holes, Russia, and try to come to a conclusion about what is truly happening there and what their Bitcoin plan really is. So let's begin with the most recent news. And of course, I'm not alone. We have Tony from the Bitcoin Way with us. And of course, our fearless leader, Nico, filling in the co-host seat. He'll be filling in the co-host seat on the Friday shows. But let's dive into the news. So I'm over here on Reuters, guys, and the headline is Russia is using Bitcoin in foreign trade, finance minister says. And of course, this came out on Christmas Day. And if you watch the show, I'm pretty sure
Opti, there's a little bit something wrong with your audio. Can finish? Yeah.
Is it better?
Am I better? It's fixed now. It's fixed.
Okay,
now.
My bad, guys. Okay, so we covered this news. I believe it was Monday. Fact check me on that. We covered the idea of what's going on with Russia, but let's dive into the first news first. And here we go. Again, we're on Reuters here, and it goes, Russian companies have begun using Bitcoin and other digital currencies in international payments following legislative changes that allowed such use in order to counter Western sanctions. Finance Minister Anton Siluanov said on Wednesday. Forgive me. Sanctions have complicated Russia's trade with its major partners such as China or Turkey, as local banks are extremely cautious with Russia-related transactions to avoid scrutiny from Western regulators. This year, Russia permitted the use of cryptocurrencies in foreign trade and has taken steps to make it legal to mine cryptocurrencies. And of course, we know they have a lot of energy, and they are actually mining Bitcoin in Russia. Now, we have a quote here. As part of the experimental regime, it is possible to use Bitcoins, which we have mined here in Russia, in foreign trade transactions. Sounds kind of like the Trump thing, like all Bitcoins will be made in America. And it seems like Mother Russia is doing something similar. Anyways, such transactions are already occurring. We believe they should be expanded and developed further. I am confident this will happen next year. Now, of course, you go in, we're not, obviously Nico and I don't speak Russian, but shouts out to our friend Katie the Russian over at Plan B Passports. And she translated this video, this clip coming out. And so she put out a tweet and it goes, has Russia started to utilize alternative payment instruments in international trade? And then the quote here is, we've passed new laws as an experimental policy. You can now utilize Bitcoin, which we mined in Russia, as mining has been legalized as well. These transactions do take place. Now, the interesting thing is, remember, we covered this news story on Monday, I believe it was, about what is going on in Russia. And Russia just passed, or rather enacted, a 6-year blanket ban on Bitcoin mining in 10 regions. So it's very interesting. On the one hand, they seem to be, stopping mining for individuals in the country, but on a nation state level, they are pushing for international trade settlements, bypassing sanctions. So it really goes down to kind of what Nico and I were saying on the show. It's in Mother Russia, Russia can use Bitcoin to transact and bypass international sanctions, but in the country, the citizens aren't allowed to freely use money, which is kind of the idea we've been talking about here forever on the show. Bitcoin is a Trojan horse for freedom. So it is interesting, a rules for thee, but not for me situation. And if you really kind of look into the news, especially this week, there's been a lot of people talking about what's the use case for Bitcoin. You're just speculating. You guys are just gamblers. And here we have Russia literally using Bitcoin, and I would argue as it's designed. This is the whole point of Bitcoin, is it is censorship resistant, permissionless. When you need to use when you need to transact and someone wants to stop you, this is why you use Bitcoin. And so, as I've been saying all year long, 2024 has been one of those foundational years where I think all lot of the bricks have been laid to show the world that there is an actual use case for Bitcoin, whether it's on the corporate level, whether it's the institutional interest, whether it's on the nation state level. The world is waking up to a very simple fact that you need to have a money that is not controlled by anyone and that you can transact freely. A neutral money for the world is going to catch on, and it is beneficial. And let's not forget the clip of Putin that we played, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where he very clearly was like, maybe we need to use a money that you can't ban. No one can ban Bitcoin. And so you're seeing that this is playing out. And it really goes into a trend I think we've been talking about here on the show for a long time. It's this idea that the people in power, I think, are very aware of what Bitcoin is, what is at stake, and we're seeing that it's starting to play out. So to a lot of people watching this, maybe you have your own views on Russia and Putin himself individually, but Bitcoin is for enemies, as the meme goes, and Bitcoin is a neutral money. And if someone wants to stop a transaction, if you're in the SWIFT US dollar system, they can very easily do it. And now we're seeing that the signal is catching on, that Russia is, bypassing US sanctions using Bitcoin. They said other alternative currencies, but I would argue it's mainly in Bitcoin. So again, on the one hand, we see that on the nation state level, or rather probably on the big business level, Russia is allowing international trade settlements to happen with Bitcoin. But internally within Russia, they're starting to, it seems, to clamp down a little bit on who can and can't use Bitcoin. Obviously, they're passing some laws and some stringent obstacles for people to sign up and become, sanctioned Bitcoin miners in the country. But we're seeing that the signal is catching on, guys. More people are seeing a use case in Bitcoin. So when people tell you, what's the use case for Bitcoin? You guys are just speculating. You guys are just gamblers. Now we have multiple examples of what the use case is for Bitcoin. A neutral money that cannot be stopped. This is the use case for Bitcoin. And then, of course, store of value, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to pass it over to Tony first. Tony, thanks for coming on the show. What's your thoughts on Russia using Bitcoin for international payments, but also seemingly banning mining within its own territory?
Yeah, this is fantastic news, man. This was inevitable. I mean, the day the US dollar was weaponized, it created this result. I mean, now that people know that the money that they've been using for all these years can be switched off instantly just because somebody disagrees with you. Well, if they can do it to a country, can you imagine what they can do to 8 billion people? And now that people realize this, but more importantly realize that there is an option, not to leave yourself dependent on this, they're going to take it. And Russia's no different. They fully tried to sanction that country. They did God knows what to it. They failed catastrophically, and now we know, well, they've put Russia and other countries like them on a mission to find a solution, not to never find themselves in that predicament ever again. And Bitcoin is that solution. I mean, Bitcoin is like it's protected by cryptography, powered by energy, and controlled by no one. So of course they're going to standardize on it because they know no one can prevent them from using it. And the fact that Russia wants to prevent its people from eventually using it is a bit ludicrous, because Bitcoin is peer-to-peer technology. You cannot stop it, no matter what you say. What you can do is maybe try to scare people from using it, but eventually they'll clue on and they'll ignore you and they will use it, and then your words will become meaningless and your point of authority will become irrelevant. This is what Bitcoin was created, right? It's created as an option out. It's not created to extend the laws and corruption of the existing legacy system. It's designed to format it and replace it completely. Russia's going to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some other country, maybe China will announce it, and before you know it, the whole domino effect will kick off, and every bloody country in the world will be doing it because none of them trust each other. So they have to standardize on something they know nobody else has an advantage over them with, and that is Bitcoin. It's applicable to nation states. It's applicable to the people. Bitcoin was created for everyone. You can't ban someone from Bitcoin. You can only ban yourself from using it.
100%. Couldn't agree more. A lot of high signal there, Tony. And this is, I think, the main point that I would like to stress for a lot of people, especially if they're newer, is like what you said about trust. Is no one trusts each other. This is why we are all looking for a currency that we can trust. And this is why the dollar's been weaponized. This is why no one's trusting fiat currencies, is because we know they're going to go crazy and print more money. It's going to debase your holdings. And then even more, if you're on the SWIFT system, obviously you have to bend the knee to American interests. And now we're seeing that, hey, well, there are alternatives now, and that also puts the U.S. in a sticky position. And going further, I think since Trump kind of came out and talked about Bitcoin, now we're seeing that everyone else is starting to talk about it. And it really reminds me of the Mexican standoff. You know, once the U.S. kind of put the gun to Bitcoin, everyone else is like, wait, now I have to go to Bitcoin because I'm not going to get left out. So it is very interesting. We're seeing Russia talk about this. We do know China's kind of backpedaling as well on their stance of Bitcoin. Obviously, we have about 20 days? No, 23 days, about 3 weeks until we see Trump get into office, and we'll see what happens. And it's looking like we are seeing a lot of signals in the U.S. that 2025 to 2029 is going to have some favorable jurisdiction for Bitcoin. So the global game theory is really picking up, and I think we are starting to see a gradually then suddenly moment. And I think we just need one more domino to fall down, and things are going to get super crazy. But let me pass it over to Nico. And Nico, what's your thoughts on this? I think we literally called this out on Monday, or whenever we called this, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever the show was. It's like we knew this was happening. So, Nico, what's your takes when we finally get some confirmation of Russia using it for international settlements?
Yeah, I mean, it's the game theory playing out. And I just want to clarify a couple things, right? So they, first, you have to go through the timeline of things. And none of this, again, is happening by mere coincidence. Elections have consequences. Of course, countries that are competing with the United States, they see the United States potentially gaining an edge in Bitcoin, and they obviously want to stay on top of that, right? That's why you hear, the rumblings coming out of Hong Kong, basically saying, hey, we want Bitcoin businesses to come here. Hong Kong, I know it's technically, one country, two systems, but it's essentially a proxy for the CCP. And then, of course, Russia. But the Russia news is a little bit interesting because, first of all, we have to understand that right now they're in a war. They've lost a lot of people in that war. So it's kind of like a wartime economy. I saw that in the chats when we were, saw that in the comments. So it's important to pick that out. And another thing I want to specify too is they banned Bitcoin mining in some regions of Russia. And I believe those regions are actually closer to the front line of where that war is taking place. So it's not banned in every region, in every state. I don't know what the state equivalent is in Russia. And another thing also that I'll mention is specifically if you want to mine Bitcoin in Russia, you have to seek state approval. So you actually need a license to do so. And in regards to them using Bitcoin to facilitate international trade due to pressure from sanctions, that's a no-brainer. But Opti, you were mentioning this earlier on in the show, referencing the article "Bitcoin is a Trojan Horse for Freedom," written by Alex Gladstein in 2021. I mean, what people have to understand is that freedom go up technology, and this is to quote his article, and number go up technology are inextricably linked. You cannot disconnect the two. But if you're a dictator, if you're a leader of a country, you cannot resist number go up, but you don't want freedom go up. What they don't realize is that it's a Trojan horse. Once you let Bitcoin inside, the kingdom, the country, you can't take away, you can't just benefit from it, and then, not allow the whole freedom aspect of it. So it's fascinating. It's the game theory playing out. And I would not be surprised to see Russia backtrack again. But what's really interesting, too, is, Putin was caught in an interview. We called this when it was breaking, where he just went on a Russian state media and was basically a quote unquote reporter asked him something regarding Bitcoin. And he was just you can't ban Bitcoin, and then like a week later, it was announced that, you know, the Russian State Duma, which is the equivalent of the House of Representatives here in the United States, made the announcement that they were proposing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So, you know, again, all of this would not have happened, whether it's the news from China, the news from Russia, the news from Brazil, the news from Morocco. None of this would have happened if Donald Trump didn't win the election of November 5th, 2024. So elections have consequences. This is why we're here. But it's beautiful because, long story short, guys, when nation states and institutions compete to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible, the holders of Bitcoin win. Why? Because the price goes up. And that's the game theory. That's the incentive playing out. This is how Max Kaiser prophetically knew many years ago when he coined the term global hash war. He knew this was happening, and it was because of Bitcoin's incentives, you know? So it's beautiful to see this play out, but it's a tough pill to swallow. Could you imagine, even here in the United States, we were covering some news in regards to regulations that are potentially going into effect in January 1st of 2025. Like, it's crazy, some of these reporting requirements. Hopefully the Trump administration walks some of this stuff back, but you have to understand the moment in history that we're in, and the moment that we're in is the separation of money and state, right? And do you think they're just gonna say, you know what? You know, they have better money, it's sound, it has rules without rulers. We're just gonna give over the keys and just kumbaya. No, that's bullshit. They get a tremendous amount of power from having a monopoly over money and having control over money. And to think they're just going to give that willingly is extremely naive. But I think we're inevitably going to win because we have incentives on our side and they have coercion. And if history is a teacher, incentives end up ruling the day. Anyways, before we start the show, I do want to give a very special shout out to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack, bitcoinwell.com. Enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin on-chain or via Lightning Network in Canada or the USA. What makes Bitcoin Well different is that it's a completely non-custodial platform. What does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. They don't even allow you to leave your Bitcoin on the exchange. Highly, highly recommend them. Also, if you're a higher net worth individual and you're looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, check out the newly announced Bitcoin Well Infinite product. It's a Bitcoin OTC desk that offers a white glove service. So if you're tired of dealing with a finicky UI, if you're tired of dealing with Coinbase, or you're tired of dealing with computers to buy yourself Bitcoin, you have to check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. You will be assigned a personal representative who will take care of your account, who you can call at any time to buy, sell, or perhaps you have questions about Bitcoin, and they'll probably send you over to our friends over at the Bitcoin Way. So guys, go check out bitcoinwell.com. Best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. All right, everybody, before we get to the numbers, there's a lot of you guys watching live. We're at 1,600 live views already. If you guys are enjoying the show, make sure to smash that like button. All right, everybody, no more delay. Let's get to the numbers. We have a lot to talk about. We'll be right back.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stampseed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on StampSeed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store.
All right, boys and girls, you already know the deal. Scan the QR code.
Your cable.
Oh, man. Okay. Scan the QR code. Get 50% off on a stamp seed kit by using the promo code SIMPLY. All right, guys, we're over here on Clark Moody's dashboard running through the numbers. Of course, the Bitcoin price is currently $93,980, guys. Wrap it up. $94,010. It's over. Bitcoin is over. It's dead now. Anyways, the stats per dollar, how much Bitcoin you can buy for a single dollar, aka how much the dollar is worth in Bitcoin, is currently at 1,064 sats per dollar. The current block height is 876,629. The market cap in fiat terms, in dollar terms, is $1.86 trillion. The Bitcoin versus gold market cap is at 10.11%. And the total percentage of Bitcoin that will ever be issued is currently at 94.29%, which means roughly 19.8 million Bitcoin are currently circulating. All right, so going into this a little more, guys, we got Pomp on Fox, and he's talking exactly about kind of what we've been talking about in the beginning of the show, is that now the cat is out of the bag. As we said in the beginning, ever since Trump kind of came out and become pro-Bitcoin, you're seeing that other nations are starting to follow suit, essentially doing what we just said a minute ago, what Bitcoin is designed to do. If you need to use a money that people want to stop you from using, you should probably drop the dollar and go into Bitcoin. Though, I want you guys to notice one kind of interesting trend here, and it's the anchor's reaction after the fact, and the fact that they're no longer kind of just, talking smack about Bitcoiners. It seems like they are starting to get bullish on Bitcoin, and if the segment was any longer, they would probably be giving you price predictions themselves. So let's check this out.
I think that Bitcoin is the king. It will remain the king. I think that most of the capital flows from the traditional world are going into Bitcoin. There are going to be other assets that enter into the market. You obviously see the ETH ETF got approved. You'll probably see others that get approved as well. But the argument for anything other than Bitcoin is a very different one. That is a technology argument. Yes. It's no different than trying to pick between Amazon and Google and Facebook. The Bitcoin argument is much more akin to, do I want to protect my purchasing power? It's digital gold. And so that argument to me is much more reasonable for the government to say, hey, we're going to go and we're going to put this in our reserves. I don't think that the United States wants to get in the game of trying to pick tech winners or losers based on, the allocation of capital.
Do you have a one-year target for us on Bitcoin, with and without the Bitcoin reserve?
With or without, we're going higher. I don't necessarily have a price, but I do think that if we go ahead and buy Bitcoin, what's interesting is we will not be the first country to do this. There's a lot of other countries who have already bought, they're mining, they're holding Bitcoin. What I do think is important, though, is America is the greatest capital market in the world. And so if America does it, it pretty much reduces all of the career risk, all of the critiques for all these other countries. And so, Russia recently came out and they said, hey, we're mining Bitcoin. We're starting to use it in transactions. People are like, oh, that's Russia. We kind of don't like them. And so they're kind of in the corner. People look at El Salvador and they're like, that's El Salvador. I couldn't point it out on a map.
But if they're doing it, it makes more of a case if your enemies are doing it that you should be.
Well, look, the United States took a pretty drastic action in terms of the sanctions that they went after individuals, country, and also took some of the Russian assets and said, hey, we're going to give it to the Ukrainian people. When that happened, Bitcoiners came out and they said, you are actually going to further accelerate the demise of the U.S. dollar because now you have introduced this sanctions risk. There was a paper that came out of the Harvard Economics Department where they talked about, will countries now start to buy Bitcoin, not for price, not for the sovereignty, but actually as a sanctions hedge?
Russia.
And so Russia is actually doing that.
Yes.
Do you think they're the only one?
No.
I wouldn't bet on it.
I will say someone on this program on the network said the first 100K on Bitcoin was the easiest, and it could easily get to 200K by next year. I'm like, it took us this long to get to 100K, and you think 200K in the next year?
Some people are saying 250.
I heard 500.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Well, if you guys just keep, we'll just wait a couple minutes, you guys will be at a couple million here.
Anthony Pomp.
Well, just making light of the conversation. It's funny at the end of it. They're like, wait, it took 15 years for Bitcoin to get 100K. Wait, are we going to see 200K, 300K, 500K next year? You're seeing that, Fox News has been doing a pretty good job of spreading the Bitcoin signal. It seems like a lot of the anchors over there, the talking heads, are starting to believe in Bitcoin. And this is us infiltrating the culture in real time. And remember when we used to get talked about Bitcoin, it was what? Burning the oceans up. We're going to take all of the energy of the world. Bitcoin's for criminals. And now they're kind of jokingly talking about, wait, how high can Bitcoin go? Which I think is just absolutely hilarious. We've come a long way. But talking about what Pomp was saying and really connecting this to the beginning of the show, you're seeing that this signal is spreading. As we've been covering throughout the whole year, more people are waking up to the actual use case of Bitcoin, why you might need it in your portfolio, why you might need it on a nation state level, why you might need it if you're, a political prisoner or someone that is a political dissident. This is the use case of money, a neutral money that no one can control. And it's very interesting to kind of hear Pomp say what we've all been saying. I'm sure you guys sat down for holiday, Christmas, dinner, and your friends and family were trying to tell you that, oh, there's no use case for Bitcoin. And now we have so many receipts to show that this is the case. So if they kind of, brushed off Russia using Bitcoin, well, you can point to BlackRock. If they brush off BlackRock, you can point to Russia. You can point to El Salvador. Nico and I have been saying this throughout the year. El Salvador really started the dominoes here, but they're such a tiny country that it was really easy for you to just kind of brush them off and be like, oh, they're an insignificant player on the world stage. But now we literally have a world superpower embracing Bitcoin, using Bitcoin for what it's designed to do. And I think 2025, again, I'm repeating myself going into this next year, I think we're going to see some really big fireworks in regards to Bitcoin, people using Bitcoin. Again, we've seen Russia, China is backpedaling. Of course, the US. I think 2025 is going to be a huge splash for Bitcoin in the cultural zeitgeist. And it's going to be very interesting to see all of this play out. And as Nico said, if you are a Bitcoiner and you're holding, you are the one who benefits. If you take that Bitcoin into custody and you don't leave it on exchanges, this is how we win. Anyways, Nico, I'm going to pass it on to you. What's your thoughts on Pomp on Fox? Essentially saying what we've been saying on Simply Bitcoin, but on the corporate press for all the boomers out there.
So first off, I want to give a shout out to the YouTube live stream. Of course, we broke 600 live viewers, currently at 624. We're at 157 likes. Help us break 200 likes within the first 45 minutes of the show. So if you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Of course, shout out to Rumble and X on the verge of breaking 2,000 live viewers. So appreciate y'all. Anyways, so a couple thoughts. Pomp got a lot of heat for recommending certain products earlier on with his podcast. And what I got to say is, and this perhaps is a little bit unpopular. Appreciate the zap. We are streaming, ladies and gentlemen, on Nostr. And we are uploading also Simply Bitcoin content on Nostr via Primal. Appreciate the Primal guys for helping us out and giving us the ability to do that. But anyways, back to Pompliano. So, Pomp got a lot of crap for some of the things, some of the sponsors that he had earlier on, and unfortunately some of them went down. What I got to say about that is, first of all, it's very, very difficult to run a media business in this space. I respect all content creators, and I think Pomp has incredible takes when he goes on the legacy media. And we all have to remember that, us Bitcoiners, we make content for other Bitcoiners or people that are currently seeking Bitcoin. That's why these legacy media interviews are so important, because he's essentially breaking the echo chamber. Every time he goes on there and he drops his knowledge, he's essentially, talking the Bitcoin gospel. I find it funny when they asked him about the price prediction, and he didn't want to answer that. In regards to that, I mean, like, dude, like, you know, I think, you know, and people disagree. I think the general consensus right now on X is that, you know, Bitcoin's going to hit 150K, 200K. That's it. It's going to go back down. I'm a much more bullish than that. I mean, I had Dr. Jeff Ross on the show the other day, and he's speculating, and he's talking about $475,000 Bitcoin in 2025. And what I got to say is I think us Bitcoiners have completely forgotten what a bull market feels like, because a real bull market hasn't happened since 2017. And Bitcoin tends to do the exact opposite of what the general consensus is. So I would not be, you know, I would not be surprised at all that, you know, I would not be surprised at all that if, I would not be surprised at all if, you know, like Bitcoin overperforms. And what I've also noticed too is it's not only Pomp, it's also Natalie. They've been regularly getting Bitcoiners on legacy media to talk about Bitcoin, and it's because the price appreciation. And of course, Michael Saylor's stock is outperforming the rest of the S&P 500. I mean, that's news, you know? So shout out to Pompliano. I know some Bitcoiners are not the biggest fan. I like Pomp. I like his takes. And I think he does a great job when he goes in there and just educates, you know, the masses via the legacy media. And I think the anchors are starting to pick up on it. I mean, Opti, you're one of the first people to point this out, like Squawk Box, you know, Joe Kern, I believe that's his name, you know, regularly defends Bitcoin. And, you know, and you would have thought 5 years ago that would have never happened. So we're clearly making progress. I mean, if you have the president of the United States coming in, being sworn on January 20th, wishing Bitcoiners happy birthday, I think that's like, you know, that's the definition of winning. We're definitely breaking the echo chamber. So we just got to keep on the pressure. We got to keep on, you know, spreading the word of Satoshi. And we got to get more people buying Bitcoin, taking that Bitcoin into self-custody. And this is how we're going to win. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Tony. Tony, what are your thoughts on Pomp's legacy media interview?
Man, it's great what he's doing. I am familiar with what he used to do in the past, and I guess that's okay, man. I mean, we all start, you know, the wrong way, and as long as you adjust properly over time, you know, and the end result really is what matters. All this attention towards Bitcoin, all this high signal is extremely bullish. I used to be more of the mindset of like Bitcoin has to be adopted like the purest way, the way I want to see it done. But you know, over time, I just quickly understood that that's not the way the world works, unfortunately. We want everyone to get into Bitcoin. Like, I don't really care at this point how you get into it, as long as you start paying attention to it and start benefiting from the technology. But what I want to stress is we shouldn't forget that Bitcoin was created for us. It was created for the people. I mean, it's amazing that governments are now FOMOing in and institutions are FOMOing in, but Bitcoin wasn't created for them. Right? I mean, they've always been rich by manipulating and corrupting the money and printing it to oblivion. They've always had wealth. Bitcoin was the first time in history where normal 8 billion folks, you know, even a high percentage of them that have never had like a dollar to their name, so to speak. Now there's this once in a history opportunity to take that back and like to regain the power and actually be able to save, you know, their time and energy into something that 100% belongs to them, that can't be co-opted by anyone, that can't be shut down by anyone simply because they don't like your face or your opinion. I mean, this is what Bitcoin is about. And Bitcoin will only win as long as it remains decentralized. This is something that I don't want people to forget, because they're getting caught up in the number go up and the government FOMO and the institutional FOMO. All of that is great. But fundamentally, none of it matters if Bitcoin doesn't remain decentralized and secure. And the only way this is going to happen is when folks understand that you need to take it into self-custody and not, you know, give in to the complacency and conveniences of all the false advertising that sometimes, you know, I hear going on in the space. I mean, to really understand Bitcoin, you have to unlearn and let go of many beliefs that you were essentially taught since the day you were born. And I understand that this is extremely hard to do, because essentially you're admitting to yourself that you've been a sucker your entire life, and you've been lied to, and you've just been part of that rigged system happily. Well, I thought everything was normal until my entire life blew up, and only then did I dive in and uncover the truth. And it's like once you understand where how the system is played and where the fiat money comes from, its origins, the Ponzi, the fraud, the scam that it is, the system that was designed to steal, censor, and control. That is the fiat system, nothing more. Once you understand that, you start seeing the world from a very different lens. And once you have those binoculars on, you can never take it off. All right. And I'm extremely bullish because over the last 2 years, I've seen a tremendous increase in normie interest in Bitcoin, but like the right way. So, when you take these binoculars and you pass it to someone and you tell them, look, this is what I'm seeing, this is why I'm excited, and then they look through it and they get it, that's one more person that comes into this army of people that keeps Bitcoin decentralized. Because without this, none of it matters. So it's really important to appreciate that, Bitcoin in self-custody, that is the revolution. Like none of this good news and excitement and Bitcoin is winning talk like goes anywhere if it doesn't remain fully decentralized and secure. I believe it's going to continue happening because there's tons of people that are finally clicking in, that are finally coming into this space the right way. They are ignoring the false advertising. They are ignoring the false marketing. They are taking full self-custody and understanding that the personal responsibility around owning your money is not nuclear science. It's not that hard. It's just a brand new series of steps that you have to understand. Some people will learn it, on their own because there's plenty of great resources online for that. Others will come to the experts that will give you an instant shortcut through the trials and errors, so you don't have to risk your funds and waste weeks or months or years figuring it out on your own simply because you don't come from the tech world, right? So if you're in Bitcoin today, you've already won. That's it. They've thrown everything at Bitcoin for the past 15 years, and Bitcoin's future is exponentially, monumentally larger than anything you think you possibly missed by not getting into it in 2009 and 2010. That, back then, only like a fraction of the population was paying attention to it. Now you've got 8 billion people, every single government, biggest institutions in the world, they're all FOMOing into it. So if you want to still denominate Bitcoin in an inflationary system that it was designed to replace, well then if you're looking at a price target, even a 0.1 Bitcoin can equate to like $84 million, and that can happen like this. I think as soon as 2025, next year, if Donald Trump does, 25% of everything that he's claiming to do, you'll wake up one day with that Omega candle, and then the world will like, what the hell just happened overnight? Well, what happened overnight is that all of these big institutions and government are buying in the billions of dollars quietly. But the reason it's not reflected right now in the price is because they're doing it OTC. They're not buying it off the public market because, if they were to do that, then you'd see the craziness happen in the next 5 minutes. But they're not doing this. I don't know why they're not doing this yet, but at some point, the OTCs will eventually run out and there'll be no other choice than to buy it publicly. And that's when the dam breaks loose. So if you're still sitting here lingering, wondering if Bitcoin is a scam or if it's something you should get into, well, your window, was already small. Now it's like almost like a pinhole small. So if you don't get off, and do something, you're going to be left out of the biggest opportunity we've ever seen to create and amass generational wealth. You'll still benefit at some point from Bitcoin by earning it. That's fine. But, to be able to front run all the big boys, which was, again, the idea behind the creation of Bitcoin, is to give the people back that opportunity, right? So if you're not doing anything, well, you're just wasting it. But those that are in it, pat yourself on the back. You are solid winners, my friends. And as long as you're holding your own keys, nothing will stop you. You are unconfiscatable.
I love that. I love that. Unconfiscatable. And one of the things that really resonated with me, Tony, was when you said, and I think you hit the nail on the head, if you're in Bitcoin right now, you've already won. It's not a matter of it's not, and I know you might not feel it now. It's just a matter of just wait it out. Like you're going to see 5 years, your life is going to be radically different. And let's just say your class of 2024, and you're just getting in, you're like, God damn, Nico, my first Bitcoin price is like 100K. I felt the exact effing way. First time I bought Bitcoin, it's like $600, $700. And I was hearing stories from the OGs that were buying Bitcoin at $1 or $13 or $100. And I was like, dude, like, I missed the boat. Like, this is over. This is done. I wish I did more to stack back then. And when Bitcoin inevitably reaches 10 million per coin, I don't think it's a question of if, it's a question of when. That's not financial advice. But I mean, look, I preach what I do myself, right? When Bitcoin eventually, I believe, reaches new heights, you're going to look back and you'll be like, dude, I wish I was able to buy at 100K, right? Like Bitcoin is savings, and Bitcoin will give you the ability to live a deflationary lifestyle, meaning, and I know that's not the correct terminology and whatever, but what I'm trying to say is if you're on a Bitcoin standard and you're saving and you're earning in Bitcoin or converting the fiat that you earn to Bitcoin, you will see that your life gets progressively cheaper over time. The goods and services, the real estate, the things around you are literally going down in Bitcoin terms, right? And if you're on a fiat standard, it's the exact opposite. Things are getting progressively more expensive, forcing you to work harder, forcing you to think short term because it's very nihilistic. You feel like you have no hope for the future. So when Tony says, if you're in Bitcoin now, you've already won, that's exactly what he means. It is the cheat code to your financial future. That's what we believe wholeheartedly at Simply. And of course, Tony, I know for a fact he does as well. All right, everybody, let's get to the news. We have tons to talk about. I do want to give a shout out to the chat again. We have broken 2,000 live viewers on the live stream. Almost 100 of you guys watching on Rumble and on YouTube. Oh my God, almost 700. Guys, we're on the verge of breaking the 250 like goal. Let's raise that up to 300 likes. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Help us get 300 likes before the end of today's show. All right, everybody, no more delay. Let's jump straight into the news. We have tons to talk about. Let's check it out.
I want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet design with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind.
All right, everybody. So Opti's on the go. I'm on the go too. And we don't have the Passport with us, but Guys, not your keys, not your cheese. You want to take self-custody. I'm just still going to make Opti full screen. Opti, there you go. Guys, not your keys, not your cheese. You want to take self-custody of your Bitcoin, which is why we recommend our sponsor, Passport by Foundation Devices. Use promo code SIMPLY to get a discount. It does not come with Opti, but it will get you a discount to a Passport by Foundation Devices. Opti?
It could come with Opti. The right
No,
price. No, I'm just joking. All right. Anyways. Okay, guys, we got some interesting news coming out of Wall Street. First, I think we're going to, with this news, answer a lot of questions. And also, I think, Michael Saylor will also be vindicated once you hear these news stories. So first and foremost, I'm over here on Cointelegraph with the headline, Trump-linked Strive files for, quote, Bitcoin bond ETF. The fund aims to offer exposure to MicroStrategy's convertible bonds, among others. Now, going into this a little more, and the really interesting aspect of this is who owns this company. So Strive, an asset manager founded by Vivek Ramaswamy, asked United States regulators for permission to list an exchange-traded fund, an ETF, investing in convertible bonds issued by MicroStrategy and other corporate Bitcoin buyers, according to a December 26 filing. The ETF seeks to offer exposure to, quote, Bitcoin bonds described as convertible securities issued by MicroStrategy or by other companies that plan to invest all or a significant portion of the proceeds to purchase Bitcoin, according to the filing. And I do have the filing over here, guys. You can check it out yourself. But MicroStrategy is very clearly named in this throughout the whole thing. MicroStrategy is the world's first and largest Bitcoin treasury company, meaning it has adopted Bitcoin as its primary treasury reserve asset. Its strategy to acquire Bitcoin, develop product innovations that leverage Bitcoin, and advocate for the acceptance of Bitcoin and the Lightning Network, and of course, referencing their huge holdings of Bitcoin. Now, going back over here, the Strive Bitcoin Bond ETF will be actively managed and will gain exposure to Bitcoin bonds either directly or through financial derivatives such as swaps and options. Strive has not yet specified the management fees. And then moving forward, of course, they're kind of breaking down the Bitcoin bonds. Beginning in 2020, MicroStrategy has spent about $27 billion buying Bitcoin as part of a corporate treasury strategy spearheaded by co-founder Michael Saylor. And then, of course, its stock, MicroStrategy MSTR, has gained more than 2,200%, outperforming every sizable public company except for NVIDIA. And then, of course, it's to finance these buys by this convertible bond strategy. We've been covering this throughout the year, all of the details around this. And of course, they are opening up the option to essentially do the same thing with other companies. Now, this story is also interesting considering that Bitwise also did a very similar play. Bitwise files for a, quote, Bitcoin Standard Corporation ETF, which would essentially invest in only companies that have adopted a Bitcoin standard, which they define as holding at least 1,000 Bitcoin in corporate treasuries. So you're seeing two very similar plays happen right now in this ETF filing. Obviously, the MicroStrategy strategy is catching on, and everyone is looking at MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor, and either one, wondering how they can do it themselves, or two, looking for exposure. And so I find there's two things that I find very interesting here. One is the fact that Vivek Ramaswamy's company Strive is essentially investing in MicroStrategy. They want that MicroStrategy exposure, basically giving a tacit approval of Bitcoin. And I literally saw someone in the chat earlier, essentially, I think the main question here for a lot of us Bitcoiners in regards to the Trump administration is whether they're going to follow through with their whole Bitcoin strategic reserve plans, whether they're going to have some favorable regulation for Bitcoin. Well, it looks like the Trump administration and Trump himself and people around Trump are going full bore into Bitcoin. Obviously, Vivek, he's not necessarily in the government right now. He's going to be a part of the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. So you're seeing that a lot of people around Trump are very actively pursuing getting Bitcoin exposure, associating themselves with Bitcoin. And let's not forget that Strive by Vivek was actually backed by Howard Lutnick, who is now, what is he, Nico? Is he not Treasury Secretary?
He's head of Commerce. Yeah.
And then, of course, another big seed behind the Strive management is...
Opti, your cable.
is Palantir's Joe Lonsdale as well as Peter Thiel seed funding. So there is, some concerns in regards to that, but it's starting to show that, hey, it looks like the Trump administration is going to be very pro Bitcoin. They're getting Bitcoin exposure. They want Bitcoin exposure. It is starting to look like the Republicans in the Trump administration, they want Bitcoin to win. Remember, Trump said he wants 150K Bitcoin. I was saying day one, but he wants 150K Bitcoin very early in his presidency. It seems like he is kind of linking his reputation to Bitcoin winning, which is, good and bad, I would say. But the second part is the MicroStrategy strategy, I think, is being completely vindicated, and everyone on Wall Street is looking at Bitcoin and basically, essentially, either going to follow suit or wanting to get Bitcoin exposure. Now, Nico said this all year. Saylor's been putting on a masterclass throughout the whole year, showing Wall Street how to get Bitcoin. Now, I'm sure there's some Bitcoiners that are kind of, drinking the haterade around Saylor and MicroStrategy acquiring that much Bitcoin, but the signal is there. Again, the receipts for 2024, I think, prove very clear cut that you add Bitcoin to your personal company treasury, even your nation state treasury, and it's going to benefit you. And now more and more people are waking up to this strategy. And it seems like, the Nancy Pelosi trading is going to have, a run for its buck if Bitwise is going to invest in just Bitcoin strategic reserve fund. And then you also have Strive from Vivek, essentially just going to invest a bunch of money into MicroStrategy. So it's definitely some Wall Street games playing out, but the signal remains the same. Bitcoin is the best performing thing, period, and you want exposure to this. Obviously, here at Simply Bitcoin, and of course, Tony at the Bitcoin Way, we argue you want Bitcoin in cold storage, you want Bitcoin in self-custody, but I think this is just that coming wave of Wall Street's interest in Bitcoin and the tsunami of capital that is eventually going to end up at Bitcoin. So very interesting developments we got yesterday. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Tony because we are going to be talking about self-custody in a few minutes with the Bitcoin Way. So maybe we get, Tony's take on why we need to take Bitcoin into self-custody. But what's your thoughts on Vivek basically, investing or making an ETF around MicroStrategy? We're seeing Bitwise do ETF on the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve strategy. So what's your thoughts on the whole MicroStrategy strategy? I think he's been completely vindicated this year.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, Michael Saylor has been a very positive force in the Bitcoin space. He brings in a lot of knowledge, that's for sure. Now, how exactly his MicroStrategy concoction works, I have to admit, I don't fully understand it, other than I know it's extremely profitable and it's making people a lot of money. However, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, this is not Bitcoin, right? This is, I guess, like exposure to Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, it is the best performing asset. No matter where you put it, it's always going to do well. But, from the world that I come from and the lens that I view the world, I mean, I personally wouldn't invest in something like MicroStrategy because I don't believe in fiat. I don't see the dollar as money anymore. I don't see any fiat currency as money anymore. So instead of placing my risk and time and energy into something that for me is essentially worthless, I would much rather invest it directly into Bitcoin, which is the underlying performing asset, and hold it myself. Because no matter what happens above that, all the attention that's happening in this space, and there's a lot of it coming in with Wall Street coming in and the governments and the institution. Yes, it's a ton of money. So all of that, it'll play out the way it plays out. But fundamentally, whoever is holding the asset himself or herself in self-custody is going to be catapulted into generational wealth that the world has never known before, because all of this multiplier effect of all of these other activities happening over Bitcoin benefit the ones holding it in full self-custody. This has always been my view on this. And so Bitcoin's for everybody. They want to play these fiat games with it. No one can stop them. I mean, people can do whatever they believe will serve them best. And for those that believe in that model, well, they're welcome to participate in it. But ultimately, I believe that anything that is not full Bitcoin and full self-custody is a risk and will end up backfiring at some point in time. So that is our view on this and our ethos behind everything that we do.
Totally. Nico, I don't think we need to rehash your view on Michael Saylor being vindicated this year. I think for you, the more interesting angle is this idea now of it looks like Trump might be following through very clearly and heavily in the Bitcoin space, considering a lot of people around him are very pro Bitcoin. So what's your take on Vivek's MicroStrategy ETF right now and the connection with Trump?
Yeah, so first I'm looking at the poly market odds right now. And for anyone who doesn't know, betting odds tend to be more accurate than polls and any other predictors. The odds right now that Trump will make Bitcoin a reserve in the first 100 days, according to Polymarket, is 29%. But that's what the market is thinking. Now, in regards to the incoming Trump administration, we got so much
we still do
for talking about this. And the reason we kept talking about this is I'm like, guys, not that Bitcoin needs a politician. In fact, I would make the argument that politicians need Bitcoin to stay relevant. But I said that from a regulatory perspective, put all his policies aside. We're single issue voters. We're Bitcoiners first. But from a policy perspective, from a regulatory perspective, it would have been incredibly positive for him to win. And it would have been negative for Biden to win another term from a regulatory standpoint, without a shadow of a doubt. And we got so much crap for it. We felt like we had to say something. The Samurai Wallet guys were arrested. And then here we are, not even a month after the election. Trump isn't even sworn in yet. Price of Bitcoin is sitting roughly at 100K, and you're listening to members that are going to be part of his cabinet or working closely with him, heavily invested in the space, in the industry. Like, I can't say this again, elections have consequences. I know we all want to live in this world from the sovereign individual where, politics is irrelevant. The nation state is not what it used to be, but we're not in that world yet. We're in the transitionary period. And in the transitionary period, unfortunately, fiat elections still have significant consequences for everyday life, specifically if you live in a specific jurisdiction. If you live in a specific jurisdiction and they have hostile Bitcoin regulation, you're not going to be able to start a Bitcoin business there. You'll be able to use Bitcoin, but like under the table, essentially. So, if Bitcoin gives you the power to move with your feet. But, Opti and I were seriously considering going to El Salvador when Operation Choke Point 2.0 was at its height, So, yeah, I think it's incredibly bullish because no one is better than their incentives. Fundamentally, people are run by incentives. And if you have, like, the Trump cabinet as hardcore, heavily invested in the Bitcoin ecosystem, in the Bitcoin space, that is massive. Like, that's huge, because they would be acting against their own interests if they tried to pass any type of anti-Bitcoin regulation. And I'll say this, do you think it's a coincidence that Trump is, he said the other day, he's like, it doesn't make sense that Bitcoin has capital gains because Bitcoin is money. Like, what is that going? What's happening there? Do you think he's saying that like, oh, like these Bitcoiners are so great? And he's saying that because he probably has some. He's saying that because the people around him own Bitcoin. We know for a fact that the vice president, JD Vance, owns Bitcoin. Like, that is confirmed. David Bailey gave Trump a Bitcoin at the Bitcoin conference, like the physical Casascius coins. I don't know how to pronounce that. A physical Casascius coin to Trump on stage at the Bitcoin conference. Like, aligned incentives, So it is incredibly positive. And now that Vivek is talking about a MicroStrategy ETF. Like what? Like MicroStrategy essentially acts like a Bitcoin proxy. Like if you're buying MicroStrategy, you're buying MicroStrategy to get exposure to Bitcoin. So the fact that a guy that is working so close to Trump is actively going out and where do you think the price is going? Like it's not rocket science, but I think a lot of us don't believe it. We do not believe it because we have PTSD from 2021 when the CCP banned Bitcoin mining in the middle of the parabola. And it literally took the life out of Bitcoin. And you saw the hash rate drop 50%, the price quickly followed, and then it slowly recovered. And then we had that like lame double top. And we were all like underwhelmed. We were like, dude, this sucks. This sucks. This is like, you know, this is not what happened. So it's very difficult to conceive a parabola in Bitcoin because we really haven't had one since 2017. Now, am I saying we're going to get a 20x? I mean, that would be $2 million per coin. I highly doubt that. Anything can happen. But even if it does a quarter, even if it does half of that, a quarter of a 20x is a 5x, right? 5x from 108,000, that's more than $500,000 per coin, right? Like at a 2x, which I think would be a letdown next year, that would be 216,000 from the all-time high of 108 that we hit earlier on. Like a 3x would be at $300,000 per coin. Like you would lose your mind at $300,000 per coin, right? So, you know, all the regulatory planets are aligning on the corporate level. All the corporate level planets are aligning. Meta Planet, MicroStrategy, Bitcoin. Well, all these companies are, you know, again, I agree with Tony. I don't know what's going on back there. But, you know, it looks like Bitcoin is helping their corporate strategy. And then, of course, the price of Bitcoin keeps going up. So, yeah, this is incredibly bullish. I can't emphasize that enough, but I'll leave it at this. There's two things that are happening in Bitcoin. There's two phenomenons. There's the investment, Bitcoin as an investment, and there's Bitcoin as a revolution, right? I'm a millennial, so is Opti, and I know that Tony, because he's told us his story, has lived through the collapse of money, okay? And I'm not here for the investment. I'm here for the revolution. I think I want a world where my daughter lives in a world where, you know, in a world where money is separated from state. Just like we just went through the transition of separation of information and state. We just went through that. Elon acquiring X, the rise of Nostr, the rise of free speech platforms like Rumble. We already went through the state trying to maintain their monopoly in the narrative control over media. And then we just went over that hump. And now we're heading into the final boss. And the final boss, and that hump I think is going to be a lot steeper, it's going to be a lot harder to get over, is the separation of money and state. Because once again, I can't repeat this enough, the state, the government gets a tremendous amount of power from being able to create money for free that everyone else has to work for. And what Bitcoiners are advocating for, and don't let anyone demonize you for thinking this, all we want is a world where you don't have to work for money that another man can create for free. That's all we're asking for. So all the people that talk about equality and equity and democracy, how is that? I would say those are supportive of those ideas. I would say the idea that a group of people, that a bureaucratic elite have the privilege of being able to create money at no cost to them is more equal to a system that no one has that privilege. What system is more equal? And then the other narrative that I'll say, because I'm ranting on a little bit, but it's Friday, I'm having a good time because Tony's here. The last thing that I'll say is one of the narratives that I've seen Elizabeth Warren use is saying stuff like, you know what? Bitcoin is private money and the dollar represents the public. It's public money. That is BS. Can you audit the Fed? Could you audit the dollar? No. Can you create more dollars? No, you go to prison. That's that's counterfeiting, right? Do you know what the monetary policy is going to be, 6 months from now? No idea. Okay. That's what they say is public money. The other is an open ledger. We know what the monetary policy is going to be for the next 100 years. And anybody could audit the chain anytime they want. They run a node. And no one has the ability to create more of it. I mean, if you do create more of it, you have to pay a cost just like everybody else. What sounds more public and private to you? So anyways, I'll leave it at that. Guys, stay tuned. We're going to hit the culture. We're going to talk to Tony about the Bitcoin way. They're your personal Bitcoin IT team, and they'll help you guys take self-custody, run a node, all of that stuff, because we get a lot of questions about that in the chat. You got to go check out our friends over at the Bitcoin way. We'll be right back. We're going to hit the culture.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, HIVE Digital Technologies. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's been battle tested through every possible market. And as the first with an AI strategy, HIVE continues to redefine the future of sustainable energy. Also, gotta casually drop this in here, HIVE consistently tops the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're changing the game. Learn more by following them at HIVE Digital Tech or check out their website, hivedigitaltech.com.
All right, everybody, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, BitBlockBoom. Guys, this is going to be one of the best Bitcoin celebrations of the year. It's going to be hosted in Dallas, Texas, April 3rd through the 6th. Guys, this is one of the funnest Bitcoin conferences of the year. They have the barbecue, they have the workstations, they have the dinners, the lunches, the brunches. It's awesome. It's a great time, great celebration. If you're trying to get a job in the industry, you got to go to BitBlockBoom. In fact, it's the first conference where me and Opti met each other in person. You could make an argument that Simply Bitcoin would not exist in its current form if BitBlockBoom wasn't a thing. This is how consequential this conference was for my business, Opti's business, and what we do here at Simply Bitcoin. The entire Simply Bitcoin crew is going to be there. Rustin, Dante, Opti, Nico, Sophie, Jacob, the entire X crew, or some of them at least. Wine's gonna be upset. But anyways, you're gonna have a great time. You want to get your tickets quickly. The prices do increase in 11 days, so you want to get your tickets quickly before the prices go up. And if you use promo code BBB21, again BBB21, 3 B's. And then 21, you get $100 off of your tickets. I hope to see you guys in Texas next year at the BitBlockBoom conference. Again, April 3rd through the 6th. Scan the QR code or check the link in the video description. Use promo code BBB21 to get $100 off your tickets. Anyways, I want to take advantage of the fact that we have Tony from the Bitcoin Way here in the house. Tony, what we were talking about earlier before we went live is, we've been seeing a lot of talk. I don't want to name any names, but these ideas being planted on X about this idea of most people, they would be better off with custodians. They would be better off with other people holding their money. It's like this narrative shift that has actually come out of, again, I don't want to name any names, out of the Bitcoin community lately. Some members of the Bitcoin community lately, of course, of us maxis, not your keys, not your Bitcoin, right? So what is your response to that? What's your take on this kind of normalization of custodians? I would even say that it's some type of attack. I see it as an attack because I'll tell you what, guys, without self-custody, Bitcoin will become just like gold. It will be co-opted. You'll see paper Bitcoin. They'll use paper Bitcoin to suppress the price of Bitcoin, therefore the adoption of Bitcoin. I'm seeing this and I'm like, guys, what is this? What team are you on? What's going on here?
Yeah, man, it's utterly disgusting and disgraceful to read this in the space. I mean, I've always said there's a lot of Bitcoin influencer / hypocrites that are out there. And, you know, when you start hearing comments and reading comments like this, all it does is cement that. Without the decentralization of Bitcoin, there is no Bitcoin, there is no revolution. Pack your stuff, go home, go find a job at McDonald's. Nothing changes at that point. You understand? The whole premise of why the world is changing the way it is because we have the money that nobody can co-opt and control and do anything with other than use, right? That's the whole part of the decentralization, but you have to own it. So to have people that talk about Bitcoin all day, claim it's the best thing under the sun, then go make these irresponsible comments that people holding a certain amount of wealth, $1 million or up, are better off in an ETF because they're too stupid to learn how to hold their own money. That is disgusting and disgraceful and utterly irresponsible. When you start bringing in third-party custodians into Bitcoin, what are you doing? You are breaking every single rule of what this whole revolution is about. And you should be banned and blocked and ignored completely for making such utter nonsense remarks in the space. So it's very appalling to have to read and have to put up with this, because unfortunately these people are playing and preying on the ignorance of the masses. Bitcoin is still a novel concept to the general population. I mean, 99% of folks are completely clueless to it, but unfortunately they still rely on legacy media. They still rely on quote unquote influencers. And so when these people start, spewing these lies, well, those that don't know any better, well, a lot of them are going to fall for these lies. And at some point they will get hurt. When you're not doing self-custody, when you're involved in whatever shape, way, or form with a third-party custodian, at one point it's going to blow up in your face. That is a mathematical certainty. There's no such thing as good reputation, or these people are nice and these people are polite and I like them, I know them. There's no such thing. When it's a third-party custodian, it's a counterparty risk. Bitcoin wasn't created for this. There's no need for anyone to put themselves in that predicament. But what they need to do is take the time to sit down and learn a series of steps. It's not hard. Like I said before, this is not rocket science. We're not learning nuclear physics here. It's just a series of brand new steps that need to be explained in a certain way, follow proper security protocol, a little bit of common sense and discipline, and everything is just fine. When you're holding a significant amount of wealth, you should be at the forefront of wanting to own your money and not trusting anyone else with it, because we've seen time and time again what happens when you trust third-party custodians that are reputable. We've seen the Mt. Gox, we've seen the FTX. How many times do things have to blow up for people to finally learn and understand this? I mean, my story, for those that know it, when everything gets stolen from you, literally.
No, but Tony, like we gotta hit it. We gotta hit that story of yours, because like you gotta talk about your experiences in Lebanon. You gotta talk about what happened to you. You gotta talk about that, because that was I still remember that. That's how impactful it was. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, because please share the details with the 2,300 people watching live right now.
Well, basically what happened was that, a few years ago in 2019, my life was retired, or at least I thought it was retired. I had, ran 3 successful businesses. Life was good financially for me. And then I went to bed one night, woke up the next day with $70 to my name. Why? Because the banks decided that, screw the people, we're stealing everybody's money. So the ATM stopped working, their credit card stopped working. Nobody has access to any funds in their account, irrespective of how much money you had in it. And the worst part is, none of these pricks at the bank would answer the phone. You're a piece of garbage, nobody cares. Okay? So when you wake up to something like this, it's essentially like somebody dropping a nuke on your life. You can never prepare for it. No matter how smart and strong you think you are, something like this will destroy you. And unfortunately, a lot of folks that I know are no longer here because of this. So when you experience something like this, the level of trust that you have in the legacy system is not at 0, it's at -1 million. So when you hear people still touting third-party custodians and trusting this and trusting that, that raises my blood pressure to a point where you almost wish that they go through what I went through, so that you understand once and for all what the lesson is here. You understand? Bitcoin was created as an exit to that system. You can no longer like hold on to the beliefs that the legacy system was created to be nice. The legacy system is a scam. The idea of having to trust someone with your money, or worse, need to ask permission from someone to use your own money, is lunacy. Like, you have to be mentally ill to still adhere to that principle, right? Because first of all, you're doing this with money that isn't money. It is worthless toilet paper that a group of thieves can literally hit the button and print for free, while you have to go slave from morning to night in order to make it. And on top of it, they rip you off with taxes. And to add to it, they rip you off with inflation by continuously printing it, because, you know, they're parasites in society. They offer zero value other than extracting everything from you. And so as long as you remain in this broken system, all you're doing is prolonging the lifespan of that rubbish, which is essentially killing you and your freedom and your purchasing power on a daily basis in real time. All right. So we push Bitcoin self-custody to everyone. We do not believe that anyone is incapable of learning a few new steps. Whatever age you are, whatever your background is, as long as you're minimally comfortable on a computer, you have everything you need to master this flawlessly. And we will take you from a point of knowing nothing to a point of mastering this, where it's as if you've been doing it your whole life, irrespective of the amount of money that you're dealing with. So whether you're transacting with $100 or $100 billion, it'll be the same 60-second transaction. You're in, you're out, you're done. There's no need to stress. There's no need to panic. There's no need to break a sweat or think you're going to lose your money because you're holding it and all that stuff. We teach you everything. We bring in over 25 years of cybersecurity into the mix to account for any or most extreme scenarios that other people will not even think of unless they come from that world. And so when they decided to destroy my life, what happened is that they weaponized me into a tool of education. My mission here, I've said this many times, is not to make money. My mission here is to educate, to build an army of people that understand that the legacy system must go and be replaced by one that can no longer be manipulated by any human being. And so all this bullish news that you hear about Bitcoin is fantastic, but none of it benefits you specifically unless you have your own reserve, your own strategic reserve in your possession. I don't care what BlackRock is doing. It doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit you. I don't care what MicroStrategy is doing. It's good for the space, but is it good for you? That is the question that 8 billion people at some point are going to have to ask themselves, because if you do nothing, you will end up in a predicament where either your funds will be stolen from you the way they were from me, or they will keep them in the bank account, but their purchasing power will be castrated to a big fat zero. No matter what the number says on screen, you won't be able to buy anything. So Bitcoin is the one in a lifespan historical opportunity to take advantage of this. But so many people are flippant. Like, you know, subconsciously, sometimes I wish I can flip a switch and make more people just live through 15 minutes of what it felt like to have your life completely ripped away from you, just so you understand why someone like me is so adamant about pushing this the right way and making people see the world from the lens that I see it now. Because unless you go through something this extreme and you're living in, you know, a financially privileged world, you may not really understand why this crazy person is saying the words that he's saying. But the mechanics of fiat currency are not isolated to Lebanon. They are coming everywhere because the money printer cannot stop. In fact, it has to be exponentially worse because of the level of debt that is currently out there now. In order to sustain these monumental levels, the printing has to surpass previous records. And when that happens, that $1,000 that's sitting in your bank account is going to have the purchasing power of $50. All right. And when that happens, God knows how it manifests in the real world. Because when people are hungry, they start doing crazy things. I've seen good people do things that are unspeakable. All right. And these are people that I grew up with, and they're not bad people. They're desperate people. So are they all of a sudden criminals? No, they're not. They are people that are resorting to anything that is available to them to make ends meet. And that is the dire situation that I don't want to see happening. So the more people understand that if you do nothing, you are headed off a cliff. And if you want to do something, do it properly. Don't take the lazy approach. Like the way we do self-custody is extremely comprehensive, very detailed, but extremely easy to understand. There's no shortcuts, there's no workarounds. We're never involved in any of your custody. We don't sign your transactions. We don't touch your Bitcoin. We don't do any of this stuff. We just teach you how to be your own bank, because now you are the head of security. And the idea here is for you to master this well, take that knowledge, pass it on to your kids, and hopefully they can take that knowledge and they pass it on forever. And that torch keeps going in that direction. That's how Bitcoin wins. That is the only way Bitcoin wins, is for it to remain this decentralized and secure and in the hands of as many people as possible. This is the one in a lifetime opportunity to front run the thieves that have created a system that is destroying your life to this day. All right. So this is my message. People need to wake up. There's no such thing as a shortcut. If it's not Bitcoin, it's not Bitcoin. There's no maybe it's Bitcoin. If it's not Bitcoin and you're holding the keys, you're not holding anything. And if you're involving a third-party institution under the guise of convenience or protection, you are bringing an unnecessary risk to yourself. And I promise you, one day it will blow up in your face and you will not like the way that ends. So avoid all of this. Take 10, 15 minutes, do the work. It's not hard. There are experts to help you. We're definitely there for this. This is our entire ethos and purpose of being now, is to educate in order for people not to experience what I went through and what hundreds of thousands of folks went through just as far back as 5 years ago.
Beautiful. I mean, that was an inspiring rant, and the reason I asked you to do that, Tony, is because this is not just a business that you started out of because you were bored or whatever. This is something that you started out of necessity, and you started it because you're trying to help people avoid what you went through, which I can't even imagine what that must have been like, working decades for it to just go, overnight. And then when, you call them out, like there's nothing to go, there's no one to, and then they don't take responsibility for it. They probably like, oh, I'm sorry guys, we made a mistake, like this and that. Like that is crazy. That is theft on a massive scale. And what inflation is essentially, it's taxation without representation, and governments rely on the fact that people are just not knowledgeable about it, so they can just continue getting away with it, right? This is what Bitcoin's all about. And I ran a poll right when we started the culture segment, and I wanted to kind of get a gauge on how many people right now, 129 of you guys watching on YouTube. I asked the question, do you take self-custody of your Bitcoin? 79% of you guys said yes. This is a very good sign. But 20% of you guys, roughly 21% of you guys said no. That is unacceptable. You got to take self-custody of your Bitcoin, or you're relying on someone else holding your money. And history has shown that's probably not a good idea. So we recommend the guys over at the Bitcoin Way, if you are a little bit intimidated by, self-custody, if you're a little bit intimidated by, the technicalities of it, these guys will walk you through A to Z, and, they'll walk you through it in a way where they'll meet you where you're at in your Bitcoin journey, right? I think is incredibly important.
Nico, before you go on, for those of you guys that commented, or rather did that poll of why you aren't self-custodying, Could you either comment on the video what is stopping you from self-custody, or drop it in the chat just so we can get an idea, like what is stopping you from self-custody? And then keep going, Nico. I just wanted to throw that in there. Either comment on the video if you're rewatching this after, or if you're in the chat, comment in the chat. We want to get a gauge of why you aren't self-custody. All right, go on, Nico.
I think that's a great idea. So yeah, I wanted to ask Tony to tell his story, because I remember the first time I heard that story. You know, it was incredibly inspiring, and you know, it was a very powerful story, and it's a story that, you know, you should take the mind. And Tony, I don't know if you know this, but I'm Venezuelan, man. We went through very not, you know, I have the privilege of living in the United States, but my family members went through a period of hyperinflation, and not to mention the government there is a little bit collectivist, so. You know, freezing bank accounts isn't out of the question, so to speak, right? Yeah, so, you know, I really resonate with what you're saying, and Bitcoin truly does fix this. This is what Bitcoin is for. In the developed world, we have the comfort. Alex Gladstein coined the term financial privilege, of not having the necessity to seek alternatives. Because we're comfortable. We're comfortable with the financial system. And I'm not talking about me, but I'm talking about, you know, the masses. But it's a comfort based on BS. Because if you look behind the hood, it's not 10% reserve banking anymore. It's 0% reserve banking in the United States. Meaning, like, if everyone went to a bank right now and they said, "Hey, I'm withdrawing my money," the banks would literally go under. They don't have everyone's money. They literally take your money. As soon as they take it, they lend it out to someone else, right? That's like the whole banking model, but, you know, they don't even have reserve requirements on that. So this is a very fragile system that every time gets into a crisis, they just print a ridiculous amount of money, basically stealing from the public to make sure that the system continues to be propped up. This is literally why Bitcoin was born in the Genesis block. It literally says Chancellor on the brink of the second bailout for banks.
Well, not even that, Nico. I was going to mention that earlier. It literally says, you know, trust in third parties is the problem in the current world. In like the first sentence.
In the white paper. Yeah, Opti's exactly right, in the white paper. So, you know, again, you know, self-custody is the revolution. We've been saying that for a very long time. We're very picky on who our partners are. We have a literally self-custody by default. That's our lead sponsor, just to exchange, just to give you guys an idea of who we are. You know, we have hardware wallets, we have backup seeds, and of course, you know, the Bitcoin Way sponsors Rustin and Dante's show. So yeah, guys, if you don't take self-custody, and perhaps you're a little bit intimidated, you want experts to walk you through the process, head over to bitcoinway.com. And these fine gentlemen will take care of you guys. And much more than just taking self-custody. I mean, they offer a variety of services, right? So it's cybersecurity. Again, if you're trying to play that judicial arbitrage game, right? You know, find a residency in a country that potentially is a little bit more favorable from a tax perspective, or perhaps just from a security perspective. And also something that's not my area of expertise, which is the cybersecurity aspect. I think a lot of people, you know, underestimate how potentially vulnerable their devices are, right? So that's something else that they specialize in. So head over to thebitcoinway.com today, and you can book a free consultation, I believe, and those guys will guide you to the right place. Anyways, we are reaching the top of the show. Today's December 27th, 2024. I am your co-host for today, Opti in the hosting seat, my legendary co-host, always optimistic, and of course, my brother from another mother. And our special guest today, Tony from The Bitcoin Way. Guys, go check him out, like I said. And we're Simply Bitcoin Live. We'll see you guys on Monday for another episode. The next week is going to be we're coming up close to the last episode of 2024 for Simply Bitcoin. So you know, it's crazy. You know, this year was very big for us, and we appreciate you all for you know, for supporting us along the way, giving us the viewership, and being an amazing audience. Opti and I are going to be on BTC Sessions channel later today. So that should be a lot of fun. But until then, guys, we love you all. We'll see you on Monday for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. Peace out, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.